I like old things. I have 7 film cameras, an NES, a rotary phone, a bunch of records.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
My parents' old cassettes, a book of mechanical movements, devices, and appliances from 1907, and a phonograph. I don't know exactly how many other people in their early 20s like all this old analog stuff too, but it's definitely not zero. I've been seeing a bunch of ads recently for digital cameras that are supposed to look like film, and I've seen people online that are switching from smartphones back to flip phones because, social media just sucks. And then if you're talking about clothes, thrifting is a huge industry. I've seen so many people in my own generation whose whole personality is based on clothes and culture from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, even the 2000s. Now, there's no one right answer for why people like the things that they do. I have my own reasons for liking old things. Other people might have their own reasons for liking old things. And this is a topic that can be talked about forever. But if you ask me why I like old things and why I think all these other younger people do too, I think the first thing I would mention is 5. The 5 senses. You got sight, hearing, smell, touch, and okay, maybe just the first 4, yeah. All this old stuff, at least when it comes to objects, they're tactile. You can interact with them on a physical way. All the clicks and dials and buttons and doohickeys, thingamabobs, whatchamacallits, whatever. And when you consider that I mostly grew up with this, it starts to make sense. Sometimes it can feel like the whole world is stuck behind glass when I'm constantly on my phone. But when I use something that's older and analog, it kind of brings me back into the real world. I think human beings are kind of just built for tactile feedback. It's just the basics of how we all interact with the world, with our senses. Now, I've had older people tell me, oh, why would you want to go back and use all that old junk I was forced to use when I was growing up? Things are so much better now. You can access anything at any time, anywhere. Why would you ever want to revert back? Well,
hurry up, Violet. This way, Grandpa.
now all this unlimited information, it's absolutely fantastic. But a lot of times, it feels like a monsoon. It's so much. Since you can know everything all at once, it just can be a bit much. Sometimes I feel like Ben Stiller in Night of the Museum when Attila the Hun is trying to rip him limb from limb. It's just complete decision paralysis when it comes to the endless void of the internet. But using things pre-internet, it takes me away from that. It gives my mind a break. And all these things, listening to music on vinyl, taking film photos, using a typewriter, it just calms my mind. And it takes it away from that ever-widening dark pit that the internet can sometimes be. Which leads me into my next thing. My dad used to tell me stories about when he was my age, he would buy all these cool old muscle cars for cheap, He had a Camaro and a Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, and he would swap the engine and fix up these cars right in my grandmother's driveway. And as a little kid, my mind was always blown that he could take an engine out of a car and put a new one in all just in a weekend. But then one day, he and I were walking through a field full of classic cars in a car show, the kinds that he worked on when he was my age. And I stopped and turned to a 1970s Corvette. And the hood was open, so I looked down at the engine and went, it's actually pretty empty. I could actually see the ground through the engine of the car. Now, I'm not saying what my dad did all those years ago wasn't impressive, but those older cars just appear to be so much simpler to work on compared to any car I've ever owned today. If you buy a new car now, it's almost impossible to work on. But any of those older cars, I mean, you could read through the owner's manual and fully understand your vehicle. Like, I actually found an old 1970s Corvette manual online, and it literally had a section titled Engine and Engine Rebuilding, where it showed you step by step how to take the engine apart, how to put it back together again, and along the way told you exactly what everything did. In comparison, the owner's manual for my car from 2016, I mean, it's just all legal jargon. And it says if you have a problem, just take it to the dealership. Take it to the dealership. And in the same way as classic cars, any of these old cameras that I have behind me, you know, like this, or like this typewriter that I have here, I know how they work inside and out, and I can fix them if anything breaks. And it's such a nice feeling knowing that. It feels like they're fully mine.
I think that pretty much sums it up. I found it at Spencer Gifts.
Streaming services. Netflix, Spotify, Disney Plus, Peacock, all of them that are way too expensive and really annoying. In a lot of ways, they're great. I mean, who doesn't want everything on demand? But in recent years, they've been adding more ads and raising the prices and then adding more ads on top of that. And it's all just kind of culminating into what cable TV used to be, but in a way more expensive way. And the best part is, at any time, your favorite comfort movie? Gone. That song your parents used to sing to you when you were a little kid? Removed. You don't have control over whatever is on one of these platforms. So for me, and I think a lot of other people, it's nice to know that if I buy a vinyl record or an old VHS or DVD of a movie, no one's coming to take that away. And going back to physical objects, it's nice to know that a movie or any music you own physically exists in the world, apart from it being just some artistic concept that's somewhere out on the internet. It's actually in your possession. You can hold it. Because the internet is great, but you don't really know when things are going to change. Nostalgia, I think, is the biggest reason for all this. Because, I mean, who doesn't want to relive a happy memory you had from when you were a kid? There's pretty much an entire industry of nostalgia, especially recently with all these never-ending movie remakes and reboots being made. It's a huge reason why the phrase, what's old is new, exists. And my generation is just getting to the age where we're starting to reminisce about our childhood. But it doesn't fully explain why we seem to like things older than our own memories. And my answer to that is I think there's just something about using a thing that was part of everyday history from 50 or 100 years ago that allows you to live the same experience that the original owner of that thing would experience in a time that is now part of history. But at one time, you know, it was just life. And that's a cool feeling.